Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock with the asset protection, estate planning, and business planning firm Barth Calderon. And we have our channel, Wealth Protector TV, which you're on here, where we bring you incredible leaders doing amazing things. And certainly, Michael and Steve are two of them connected with Maxim Consulting Group. And I just want to jump into this because we've had a chance to talk offline. I'm enthralled by what you're doing there. So, Mike, if you want to take it off and tell us a bit about the background, and let's get into what your focus is.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Happy to be here. Yeah, a little bit about our business. Basically, we do enterprise level consulting primarily for contractors, although we also do work in the manufacturing and food space. We're pretty much nationwide. We work in generally any of the U.S. states, as well as some work in Canada and Mexico, but the majority of our business is here in the U.S. And we're organized around essentially 4 service lines. The first service line is our traditional management consulting stuff, which is think strategic, financial, operational consulting. So building out plans for what to do with, what's happening with the tariffs, how are we going to continue to grow, what's going to happen with the economy and interest rates, what are we doing about our organizational structure as companies grow. Every time the revenue of the company doubles, they have to reset the deck and revise their organizational structure. In many cases, we find businesses outgrowing the people who help them get where they are. And so we've got to either do some leadership development or upgrade talent in those specific functions within the business. And, financial consulting, so construction, obviously, cash is king. Figuring out, project cost to complete and effective methodologies to have timely, accurate, and complete financial information is absolutely imperative. It's part art, part science, but it is one of the most difficult things to do in construction. And so we spend a lot of time helping companies maximize their ERP systems and manage their financial controls, improve cash flow, and then everything operational consulting. So pre-construction planning. So think BIM, CAD, virtual design and construction, getting that information created into spool sheets to go into a fabrication facility and manufacture that product, and then training and development with the staff, a technology stack that helps enable the distribution of that information so that people can make informed decisions on a timely basis. And so that's sort of the first lane, which is our management consulting piece. The second lane is our peer groups. So we ran 34 peer groups nationally that constitute basically 6 to 8 companies within each. We tranche them by revenue and by size. And the reason is that they tend to have the same problems, but they're geographically non-competitive. So they're full disclosure groups.
Oh, yeah.
We do financial benchmarking, insurance compensation. We talk about ownership structures, ownership transitions, management succession plans. So anything to do with the business really, but in a very broad and open forum where they're talking to true peers, company to company, guys that do what they do every day in and out. So we have a lot of guys that sort of started in Vistage, which is great as a local group and to get to know other business owners in your community. But, if you've got a guy that owns a restaurant or a dry cleaning shop, it's very different than running a construction business. So these are industry specific groups, and they're designed to really help these guys grow at a very accelerated rate. And learn best practices, not only from us, but from their peers as well. So,
and Mike, quick question there. So are you, with those peer groups, are you getting together monthly, or how does it work? And is it in person, on Zoom? Like, what's the layout there?
So most groups get together twice a year in person for about 2 days, 2 full days. And we have basically, sometimes monthly calls, but there's a lot of email traffic that goes around, people asking questions about, hey, I've got this problem or this issue. What can you do to help me? Can you point me in the right direction? And even direct reach out where one company may go in and help another company with a problem project. That happened recently. Or somebody's doing something really well and the peer members will send their staff into the pure company that's doing it well to see how they're doing it and learn from them and adopt those best practices and bring it back with real world experience to their own facility and their own operation.
Are
So
you finding that the people you're meeting in person, great, gives that human contact? Are you finding that it sounds like there's this real high collaboration between everybody outside of those meetings, which is one of the great things about the consulting group is people are really doing that?
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
we find, there's a ton of interaction and the churn rate on the peer groups is extraordinarily low because once people realize the value of that resource, they don't want to let it go.
Right.
And these guys become friends that, they're not only co-owners of construction businesses that have a lot in common, they'll get to know each other personally, become friends.
Yeah.
Oftentimes spouses will start to come so they can complain about, their other half being too busy at work and things like that. And then we have three different formats we run. So we have, what we call the CEO roundtable, which is typically the number one and number two person in the company getting together. Rarely do we have companies only send one person because what they figure out pretty quickly is there's so much information to be gathered and digested. It's very difficult for one person to do it. And if one person gets excited about an idea, it's hard for them to come back and be the catalyst to spark that interest in the organization if there's not somebody else that's their counterpart who heard the same message.
When it's incredible. And when you're in those in-person meetings, are you rolling up the sleeves and actually tackling issues and working through
Oh
things
yeah,
when you're there? Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we have dedicated time that is what we call executive overviews and hot topics. We do financial benchmarking at every meeting, but that executive overview and hot topic section is just that. It's what's a current topic that you're dealing with that you want some assistance and feedback from the group on.
Yeah.
And we spend, anywhere from half to three quarters of a day on that. And then we'll pivot into some more fixed topics. And that could be anything from AI to, strategy or the economic outlook and something more focused that's designed to make sure that everybody's extracting value from the meeting. So the CEO roundtable is one format. The other two I'll hit just quickly is the parallel format, which is the exact same thing. We just bring a second functional expert in. So that could be your CFOs, that could be your ops people, your general superintendents, your fabrication facility, operations managers. So, broad base of that. And then that group, what it's doing is it's just expanding the peer group footprint inside the organization by involving other people. And then they have a peer-to-peer network with everybody in the group. And so they quickly move from just being the CEO to being really a broad-based resource for the entire organization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Incredible, incredible. And how long has Maxim been around, and where are you operating from?
So our headquarters are in Denver, Colorado, although our people are spread out throughout the country. Obviously, my rule of thumb is I don't want people in the office because if they're not out traveling, working as a consultant, then we're probably not doing a very good job. But we are headquartered in Denver. We were incorporated St. Patrick's Day of 2009. So we've been in business a little over 16 years. And we got a great team of people with a broad base of skill sets. As you'll see, we have people who are very deep in financials, we have very, very deep in technology, or very good at training, or pick your poison. So we try to pair people up based on the needs of the organization as well as the discipline, because in construction, it's very important that you understand what does a general contractor do every day versus a mechanical versus an electrical versus an asphalt paving company or a heavy civil firm. So we try to pair our people up that have backgrounds in those specific industries with them. And that, has helped us really grow exponentially, get a great reputation doing it.
Yeah, and you yourself have been a very successful businessman. Your background is tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Colorado, ended up basically working for Sturgeon Electric. My family ran Sturgeon for 25 years here in Denver. Went to Colorado State, did an undergrad in construction management, moved to the East Coast, did a couple of years in New York City, and then moved up to Boston. I worked on the Big Dig in Boston, where I was the project exec on the tunnel ventilation system. So it was a massive contract on the second largest construction project in the world. Did my MBA at night school at Boston U while I was running that project, and the company was for sale, and we, it was just time to move on because there was no backlog and no future for us. And this was all during the utility era dereg. But I just ended up back in Colorado by chance, went to work for FMI, spent 4 years there running their project execution group, moved on to Navigant Consulting, which is a large publicly traded firm, spent some time there, and then pulled out and started Maxim back in 09.
What's a great background? What did that big dig, is it anything still going on with that, or did it end?
There's always something going on with that. So they, just as soon as you think you're done, they've got they got to replace all the lights. So, it's only $1 billion project to replace the lights. So the original budget was 2.8 billion and we finished at 14.6. So
Unbelievable. Yeah. It's like the railway
wow.
system in California. Just keeps getting more
Yeah,
expensive.
but we've got more than 1,800 feet of light rail. Or whatever the number is.
Oh yeah, 2 inches. All right. Well, awesome. Steve, what you're doing some incredible things. Your background's amazing. Maybe you can highlight that as you get into what your focus is there with the firm. Oh, we got you on mute.
About that. So yeah, I'll give you my background, Paul, to start, and thanks for having us on here today. So I'm one of the partners at Maxim Capital. Maxim Capital really focuses on the investment banking and financial advisory vertical within Maxim. One of the partners, my background is pretty similar to the other partners at Maxim Capital. I've got over 30 years experience on Wall Street with some very large firms. Some are no longer with us, amazingly enough. And also smaller firms as well, where I focus on middle market transactions. And prior to that, I was a management consultant with a very large firm in New York City. And between the management consulting and the investment banking, I've got an MBA like Michael from Kellogg at Northwestern, and spent time over a decade overseas running investment banking teams in Hong Kong, Singapore, London, and Paris, and in New York as well. I was very involved in the energy patch 15 years ago, raising capital for energy companies, and got involved then as a CFO of a company that was doing field services for the midstream sector. And that's the sector that actually moves energy around through pipelines. And met Michael around that time. And when I left that firm, joined Michael to really focus on our investment banking activities at Maxim Consulting. And subsequent to that, we formed Maxim Capital and brought in other people with similar backgrounds, to mine. So that's the brief history. So what we focus on at Maxim Capital is really helping owners go through transitions, whether that's a transaction that involves capital or one that involves no capital. So that can be a capital transaction, which would be a controlled sale to a third party, basically sell side M&A. We also work on the buy side, helping companies identify potential targets, but that's a very common role that we play. We also capital linked transactions, do minority recapitalizations as well. We're bringing in outside capital to affect the recapitalization of the company. It could be a majority, meaning it's more than 50% of the equity, and it can be a minority recapitalization as well to take out shareholders, for example. And we also get involved with leverage ESOPs, and that's basically helping the company set up an employee option plan and putting on some leverage debt, right, to affect that creation of the ESOP. We're very involved as well with capital-less transactions. There, we're not bringing outside capital in for those transactions. And those can be advisory work, for example, a traditional transition to management, where you're basically bonusing employees and having those employees then buy stock. We see that an awful lot. It's a very inefficient structure, and we come up with a lot of stuff to sort of help companies move away from that very traditional, very tax inefficient and very slow process of affecting that ownership transaction. That includes ESOPs, as I mentioned, internal recapitalizations, and very promisingly tax-free reorganizations. We're exchanging the securities, the common, for a new security in the company. That new security then gets redeemed to the profits of the company over time. New shareholders come in on a zero basis, come in and be allocated the new common stock in the company, and so you're effectively able to do a reorganization, which from IRS purposes is tax-free. So Really, no situation is alike. If you take a look at our roster of clients and prospects, everyone is very specific to the needs of that company. The ownership structure, whether there's family involved, whether there's no family involved, whether there's a successor management team, whether there isn't a successor management team. But we're on calls every single day with clients. And again, every situation is specific to the company, and our solutions are highly bespoke. And we spend a lot of time on site talking to the owners of the businesses, talking to, if there is one, a successor management team, and really coming up with a holistic and custom approach to solving that client's problems. And I can give you, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's incredible. I was going to ask you, when you start interacting with owners, do you find that they already have an idea of the tools and strategies that they want to learn more about, or is it you just going in and initially educating them on, hey, here are all the various paths to talk about? Like, where does it usually start?
It's very specific. I had 2 calls last week where they were both sell-side M&A, basically a controlled sale to a third party.
Okay.
They've looked at their management team. They've looked at, don't have heirs that want to be in the business. And so they put themselves in a situation where that's the solution for the company. And so the advisory work really that we get involved with there should start well in advance of that transaction to help that company prepare for that process, make sure that they're ready to go through and successfully sell that business. In other situations, for example, we went down to Texas to meet with 2 owners of a business that each own 50%. They had a very clear idea what they wanted to do to bring in one new shareholder, and they both have children, but they're too young for them to determine whether they're really the right guys to put the equity with. So we, after spending nearly a day with those 2 owners at a very casual dinner, we came back about a week later with a structure that involved different concepts, including that tax-free organization that I mentioned. So what we're doing is, in that tax-free organization is really freezing the value for the 2 existing owners through a new security, a redeemable preferred stock, which gets redeemed by the business over time. And then allocating new equity to that new shareholder that's part of the management team. But the existing shareholders also share a third in that equity as well. So this allows the shareholders, the 2 controlling shareholders right now, to really over time get the cash out, right, in a tax efficient way, but also have a second bite at the apple if they can sell the business, in future, because they're going to own a third of the equity each. Or if their children are deemed to be worthy and capable of actually running that business, they can gift it to them. So we came up with a solution which brings in that new shareholder who's part of the management team, allocation of common stock, where the basis of the stock is 0. So there's no tax event for that gentleman to come in and actually take a third of the ownership. The existing shareholders are getting the cash out based on a valuation that we'll perform, and then they'll allocate a new common, a third each, so that they'll have stock if they grow the business, the reward for increasing the value of the business beyond that, or we can allocate it to the son or sell the thing outright. So it gives them a complete flexibility around that second transaction. And the first one freezes the value based on what they've created so far. So again, very specific to that situation, very specific to those shareholders' objectives and their retirement, goals. So again, it's hard to say, Paul, that there's a really, a common. Everything is different. Every situation is different. We have another situation out west where, they have an ESOP. They've had an ESOP for over 20 years, and now they want to buy out the ESOP. So that, because what's happening with the ESOP is, as the retired employees start redeeming that stock over time, the implications in terms of the cash flow of business are such that they're unable to execute against their strategic plan as much as they'd like to. So we're advised to take out that ESOP so that they actually have the flexibility to execute their growth plan.
Yeah, it's all amazing stuff. One thing I really noticed when I was talking to the 2 of you early on, which makes you very unique, is that comprehensive approach. Because I know when you're advising a business, like you said, you got to do it well ahead of time, but there are a lot of different disciplines involved. There's obviously the capital markets and the strategies you're dealing with. There's estate taxes, there's, asset protection, estate planning, all these things get involved. And I know that you have connected all those pieces so that no stone is left unturned. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it is. We're not tax advisors. We're not lawyers. So we involve kind of best of breed people we work with and trust. And that works real well because they're familiar with how we work. Both on the M&A side, we have transaction attorneys that we like to put forth because they know what they're doing.
Right.
And we find a lot of the companies of this size may not have attorneys that are very familiar with doing these kind of transactions. They're more corporate attorneys. They're not really M&A attorneys. So we want guys who know how to do this, that know how we work, and we like the way they work. And so we tend to bring in people from a small handful of firms that we like to work with. So, and the same is true on the tax side.
Right.
Because a lot of this stuff, again, same problem. A lot of the lawyers that are advising these companies are not familiar with things like tax-free organizations. It's not something that they've ever done. It's not something that they're familiar with, and so they're not talking to clients about them. So,
Yeah, I've got to ask you, obviously, the elephant in the room of the tariffs and the business climate, things are going on. Is that a big topic of discussion when you're meeting with these owners? Or are they like, is everyone confused, or people like, what is going on in your world with the climate now?
well, that's a great question. It's one that we had our weekly Maximum Capital call yesterday. We were debating this very topic across really all our client situations. And when it comes to, for example, an offering, we're involved with raising some capital for a company right now. And we're very concerned, I'll be quite honest, very concerned about the reception of that. There was a very good strategic reason for us to be involved in that transaction to a channel, a distribution channel we would create for the company from a group of electrical contractors. But, we get into the market there, we'll see, and we're probably 2 weeks away from hitting the market on the transaction. And we're concerned about the uncertainty. We're concerned about the impact of the tariffs on the need for these companies to preserve cash and whether there'll be additional cash to invest in a project like this. So I guess I'd love to come back in 2 weeks and talk to you about how that's going, or in 3 weeks. But right now it's kind of hard to Michael, maybe you comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from sort of the day-to-day operations, we get a closer perspective through the peer groups and the management consulting, the lean transformation work that we do. They're concerned, I mean, it's just uncertainty. They don't know what the numbers are going to end up at. It's very hard to, put a price on a project. It's very hard to negotiate escalation clauses. We have recommendations that we've put out in terms of contractual language, of different ways to negotiate with owners and general contractors with regards to the tariffs. But it's just creating uncertainty. And, with uncertainty comes basically people pumping up their prices, and they're just doing it to make sure that they protect themselves. And the downside of that, of course, is that, that starts to make the pro formas of the projects not pencil. And so, now you're in this situation where you've got private developers putting the brakes on, private equities not putting money into the market because they don't think the economics of the deal work as well as they were working before, and they can't generate the IRR that they want. So, that's just the reality, and so you see, some dwindling backlogs. A lot of our clients have very, very strong, very long-term backlogs, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get pulled. The other area of the market that there's concern in is the data center market, which has grown, I think, 1,800% in the last 5 years, if the number I read is correct. I mean, it's an astronomical number. The problem is the United States is running out of power. So it used to be that data centers consumed 1% to 2% of the power in the country. Now they're consuming between 4% and 5%. And so, you look at markets like San Jose, you can't even get power in San Jose. If you want to build a building, PG&E will tell you can get power in 2029.
Really?
How do you do that? And that's happening in more and more markets. That's happening in the Midwest. They're running out of power in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow.
You know, there's just some, so there's some tailwinds that have made that sector grow, but there's some headwinds that are going to create real challenges from whether or not, we can continue to grow at that pace. And it's been a huge part of what's pushed the construction industry over 2 trillion in annualized sales and GDP for last year or two. So.
Yeah. Well, you made the comment, both of you, that you've got to start early. If someone's thinking about, exit succession planning. So someone watching this, and your information, I'll tell everyone here, we simulcast this. So both of your information will be around this video, wherever they're watching, maybe up here or down here. But what is your recommendation where somebody should start talking to you? Is it, hey, 10 years ahead of time, or 2, or what? When do you get involved in that discussion, and what initially do you talk about there?
I think the most, so the entry point where we come in is really dependent on the question of timing, to your question, Paul. So if somebody's talking about management succession and ownership transition,
Yeah.
they need to be 5 to 7 years ahead of that at a minimum. But many of our clients I've worked with since the inception of this business, and even prior to this business, they followed us from prior companies to here, to Maxim, because they see that this is a long-term relationship, and we're going to help them grow the asset as their business, and then we're going to help them monetize that asset through the capital side. And so the growth of the business and the entry point could be as simple as, hey, we need to do a strategic plan, and that might get updated every 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And that's something we do. Or they join a peer group, and they're in a peer group and decide here and there's things that they want to fix. They want to fix their incentive compensation plan. They want to put some golden handcuffs on some of their key players. They want to do a reorg. And so we may be pulled in to do things on and off. And oftentimes that's what we have, is we have people that are in the peer group population who bring us in on a one-on-one basis for specific needs. And then as they start aging out and they reach the conclusion that it's time to start considering a sale, we bring the capital side of the business in and start introducing the different alternatives there. And honestly, at that point, we know their business and their people so well. I think it'd be very difficult to find an advisor who knows more about their industry, their company, their people, their objectives. And that's really where the magic happens for us, is the depth of that relationship.
Yeah, no, sounds great.
To comment on that, Paul, if I may.
Please.
So we have a situation again right now with a client that's on the buy side, wanting to buy a contractor in a business that they're not in right now. So it's really one of an acquisition scope. And one of the reasons we were engaged around this on the capital side was really to bring in the consulting side to come in and do due diligence and an organizational assessment on the target. And that was extremely compelling in that situation. So we're able to do that and leverage the skills and resources of the consulting side in the M&A process, right? Which nobody else in our industry can touch that. So it's a really unique skill we're able to bring.
Gentlemen, love it. As we hit the wall here on timing, this is great. I want to thank both of you for being here. Thanks everybody for listening. And yeah, information around here, I would say get connected to Michael and Steve, learn more about what they're doing. I appreciate you being on the show.
Great. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Anytime.
Yeah.